This is a Kahan TV Sports Break, NBA edition. It's been a week since we last checked in. I have Vlad here with me again. I'm Kahan, and we want to talk about some of the top teams in the NBA. It's been a struggle these past 7 days, especially for the Clippers. They were on a 3-game losing streak. Lots of panic in LA. Not lots, but people were talking about it. What happened to them? They started 14-2. They had the best record, then went on an East Coast trip. But other teams are struggling too. The Spurs lost to Orlando midweek, kind of overshadowed by the Clippers losing streak. The defending champions, the Cavs, lost 3 in a row. Even LeBron says it's not a big deal. And Golden State lost a home game to the Rockets. So I guess my question to you, Vlad, is what are we to make of these regular season games that everyone says doesn't matter, that these teams are losing? It's so early, the season's so long. So why are we watching? What is this?
Well, it's a discussion me and you have had privately many times, discussing how long the NBA season is. It's 82 games. It's months on end. It seems like it's never ending. And the playoffs are another 4 months. But at least the playoffs matter in the deciding who the NBA champion is. The regular season is, by all intended, it's a joke. It's a joke. Come on. It's 82 games. So many things happen. No, does anybody really care how many? Yes, they lost. The Clippers lost 3 straight. Okay, does that mean that now they won't be able to make the playoffs? I mean, get real. None of it matters in the long run. All that matters is how you play in the playoffs.
Sorry to interrupt you, exactly how you play in the playoffs. And we all love basketball. We wanted to start this NBA show, talk basketball, but it seems like these are just warm-up games for the playoffs. There's certain teams that we definitely know are going to be there.
Yeah.
The aforementioned teams are definitely going to be there. It doesn't matter if they lose or mess up or aren't concentrating or fall asleep for a couple games. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I do another show on this channel, the Liverpool show, and we talk a lot of soccer. And every single game in England in the Premier League is like life or death. Like, it feels like if Liverpool lose tomorrow to Bournemouth, that their season's over. They're not going to be able to win the title because they're falling too far back, like 2 losses back or something. And that's why I really wanted to start the show with the Lakers today. But I didn't want to seem too biased, West Coast biased. We'll go around the NBA first. We'll get to the Lakers in a minute. But the Lakers are an interesting team because every single game does seem to matter for them, while these other bigger clubs are just kind of moseying their way through the regular season, not really caring too much if they win or lose. I guess they're kind of giving a half effort. And it's also weird for the Clippers because their injury problems. They've had a history of injury problems, and most people say as long as you're healthy going into the playoffs, it's okay. But there's sort of a balance of trying to be consistent, have your plays ready, have your what you're gonna run, and run it and be ready to run it for the playoffs. But it's not like the regular season matters way too much if you're one of these top 2 teams. So, do you think there'll be any change ever, or is this kind of what it'll be with the NBA for the next few years?
Well, I've always said that as far as 82 games, it needs to be shorter. I've always maybe 60 games, 50 games, something like that.
So make the playoffs longer. Maybe add an extra round. If the playoffs are so important, why not?
Maybe something like that.
But half the teams do make the playoffs.
Exactly.
So many teams make the playoffs.
What are you going to do? Yeah, what else are you going to do? Add even more teams? So yeah, that's true. But definitely the season itself needs to be shorter, but that's never going to happen because of corporate greed, money that owners make. They're never going to allow the season to be any less than 80 games at the very least. So that's the what we're talking about. But as far as your comparison to Liverpool and soccer, I don't think it's a fair comparison, only because it's a totally different game, totally different sport, totally different rules. They don't really have a playoff system in there. It's just, that is the playoffs. Every game is a playoff. It's kind of different than, obviously, once you get to the playoffs in the NBA, those games do matter. So I know what you're saying, but it's a totally different sport. You can't really, it's apples and oranges. You can't compare.
All right, well, we can get into that later on. We'll have plenty of time in our lives to discuss changing the NBA schedule or whatever we can
Never
do.
Gonna happen. But
let me just ask you, last thing before we move on to the next segment. Since we're here, is there any concern for these teams? The Warriors, the the Cavs, who lost 3 in a row, they lost to Chicago on the road.
Right.
After the Lakers beat them the night before. And Clippers lost 3 in a row also. Is there any concern for these teams, or is it okay that they're kind of just not really caring about these early games?
I don't think that's going to be a huge problem for those 4 teams, but maybe Golden State, because of their lack of rebounding and defense. I think that's going to be something that's a concern for them, especially playing against a team like the Clippers who have size. But they have such a, the regular season's 82 games, like you said. It's all these useless games that you mentioned. They have time to work on it and improve in those aspects. They maybe play McGee more, play Zaza more. I don't know what the answers are for them, but they definitely need to improve in that area. But they have time to work those issues out as the season progresses.
Well, the Clippers definitely, I think, are wary of spending too much energy, just like the Warriors did last year, who gave everything to win 73 games and break the record, and then were just broken down going into the playoffs. They had injuries throughout the first 3 rounds. They were lucky to be healthy for the finals and make it through the playoffs. I mean, they didn't have to face the Clippers, and the Spurs got knocked off also. But I guess that's what we're going to have to wait and see what happens, what's going to happen with these teams. And I guess all that matters is who's healthy come April and who's playing well.
I think that's well said. I think that's the most important thing. Who's playing well, who's clicking at the right time. And, of course, health is the biggest factor always. You got to be healthy going in.
Well, we'll check in with these top teams from time to time and see if there's really any major issues. We'll check in on the Warriors' defense also. That was a very high-scoring game against the Rockets at home. James Harden basically had his way with that team. But we will check in on them later. This has been a K-Han TV Sports Break. We'll be back in a minute for another segment.